Wow. Miami 31, Ole Miss 27. What a game. Carson Beck is going to a national championship game. Didn't think I'd be saying that a year from today, but it's actually crazy. I mean, you think about where he started. He had his first year starting at Georgia, where he went all the way to the SEC championship game. They were undefeated. He looked really good, and then they lose to Alabama, and then they get knocked out of the CFB. They're the sixth seed, and so they were basically 2 games away from a national championship, because if they beat Alabama, they play Michigan, or they might have played. They might have been the 2 seed, so then they would have played. Regardless, they would have had a semifinal game. I thought they were possibly the best team that year, although Michigan won it. Props to them. I thought they could have won the semifinal game, won the national championship game. They were 2 games away. He was 2 games away. And then the next year, they win the SEC championship game, even though everyone criticized them and Mike Bobo. They all thought those two weren't very good and the offense was shaky, which it was. But they still win an SEC championship game and then go to the playoffs as a 3 seed or a 4 seed, top 4 seed. And they're a couple games away from a national championship game, but it felt like he had regressed. And then he goes to Miami, and now here he is. He's brought the Canes back to the promised land for the first time since 2002 or the 2001 season, and you shake your head, because you tell somebody 15 years ago that about Carson Beck's story, and they're like, that can't happen. He would have had to sit out a year, because that's how the transfer portal was. It's actually crazy. Anyway, whom should have thunk it? But what if I tell you before the game that Carson Beck finally throws an interception for the first time in the playoff, and then Chambliss throws 0 interceptions? You probably like Ole Miss's chances. I also tell you that Miami drops 4 potential interceptions that are right there in their hands. Those defenders drop all 4 of them. And then Ole Miss catches the only one that was in their hands. And I tell you that Akeem Mesidor misses a chunk of the game with an elbow injury. And I tell you that both him and Ruben Bain, neither of them had a sack. And I tell you what was thought to be a stout but not very deep secondary with Miami, had really good transfers that came in and started, but not really good depth. They lose 2 of their starting cornerbacks. You're probably liking Ole Miss's chances to flame them and score 30+. And they did have 400 yards of total offense, but they only scored 2 touchdowns. This game really could have gone either way, but I thought that Miami's defense showed how resilient they are, and that was just so eye-opening to me. Is even with all that went on, they still limited to Ole Miss, which is probably one of the best offenses I've seen this year, to under 30 and only 2 touchdowns. Miami obviously dominated the first half. It felt like obviously they were only up by 4, but they were killing them in the trenches, and they controlled the game, time of possession. It really came down to penalties that held them back and kept them from leading by more going into half. Those killed the drives because they were just running it, and so they would get 3-4 yards a carry and set up for a 3rd and short. Well, then once they get the false start, it would set them back. Then they had to pass it. And so first half, Beck also had a bunch of inaccurate passes. So with all that, and then the missed 38-yard field goal by Carter Davis, they're only up by 4 going into half. And I'm thinking Miami's cooked. I think Ole Miss is very much a second-half team at this point in the season. And after seeing what Trinidad Chambliss did in the second half against Georgia, I'm like, there's no shot Miami stands a chance. Trinidad takeover, as I call him. Trademark that, by the way. And so I thought Trinidad takeover was going to come in, control the game in the second half, and they were going to make adjustments at halftime, just like they do most all the time, because Pete Golding's a mastermind of defense, and they were going to limit Miami in the second half. They kind of did. They played a lot better in the second half, but Mark Fletcher in the first half was an absolute dog again, and along with that offensive line. I mean, they just turned the line of scrimmage into a scrum, and they just moved the line of scrimmage about 4 to 5 yards downfield each time and just stood there and chopped their feet and pushed. It wasn't like a bunch of guard tackle pull schemes like that. It was just fire off the ball and push, and we're bigger than you and we're going to move you. And then Mark Fletcher's the perfect back for that. You know, he kind of, and this is not a straight comparison, but he kind of reminds me of Derrick Henry. The way he runs, kind of that upright, strong, upright running. He doesn't get like super low to the ground and make a bunch of cuts. He just kind of takes the ball. It looks almost like he's standing, and he's a tall back, very strong, and he just runs and tries to run through people. And then once he gets out into open field, he can turn it on. Like he can start striding big, and he's pretty fast as well, just like Derrick Henry. And it looks like quintessential Derrick Henry running the ball, the way he's just very, very upright, ball high and tight, and he's just trying to just out physical people, just put him in the ground. So he was a dog again. And then Malachi Toney was an absolute difference maker athletically. He might have been the best athlete on the field. I mean, there was multiple times where, you know, Ole Miss is not lacking in athletic talent in the secondary, and he just made their guys look so inferior. Like, specifically, I remember they had a orbit play or orbit motion where they motioned Toney behind Beck. He throws a swing pass out to Toney, and Ole Miss had rolled the safeties. They rolled the one safety down, knowing that, you know, Toney's likely to get the ball, and they roll the one safety down to about 3 yards from the line of scrimmage. So he's probably 5 yards from Toney, and roll the other safety back, go one high. And even with that, Beck still throws it out there, and Toney still makes the guy miss, still outruns him. And it's just crazy because I don't know how you really scheme for it other than if you play like a trap corner, but then you open yourself up to a pump fake screen and then hit the, you know, Keelan Marion on the outside. So they do what you're supposed to do schematically, and he just out-athletes you. I mean, that was kind of the story of the game for Miami. Just athletes were a little bit better than Ole Miss. Carson Beck, he surprised me with his mobility and running. Like, I know we saw it in the Ohio State game where he got a couple yards here and there and kept drives alive. And he honestly, he surprised me in the Ohio State game more with his physicality. Like, he put his head down and tried to run through people. Like, it was like a statement from him. And then he came out here and he kind of turned the Jets on when he got out of the pocket. It was weird to see. And he got some big first downs on some scrambles, and then obviously at the end he got the touchdown. That was one of the biggest plays. But that in that first half he was really utilizing that, and then the fourth quarter started and Ole Miss started containing him and they started getting to him, and that's when I thought, oh shoot, this game's about to flip. Ole Miss is about to attack and win this game, and I thought they were about to clamp down on defense and Trinidad takeover was going to come out. But then, you know, they started getting to him, and they had those sacks, and then Ole Miss started running the ball well, and so they're being more physical than Miami when they're on offense. So it seems like the physicality is switched, and Ole Miss is out physicaling Miami, and Kejuan Lacey's getting chunk yards on runs. I'm like, oh yeah, this game's over. And then Ole Miss, then they started using the quick game. They're starting to throw hitches out there, throw screens. They're taking option throws, just little 5-yard throws, fade routes, all that quick game off the line. And it's worked for them. I mean, first play, they did a rollout. They hit the guy across the middle, and then they're just up-tempo, and they're gassing Miami's defensive line. They're tiring them out, just throwing hitches out there, getting 5 yards, getting first down, 5 yards, first down. And I'm like, oh, they're rolling now. Like, everything in my mind during the fourth quarter told me this game is going to be Ole Miss's. And then they get down, and the thing about the quick game is you can be successful with it and drive right down the field really quickly, but then just 2 miscommunications, 2 missed balls by a couple inches, feet here and there, and then it's 3rd and long. And that's what happened. Trinidad got pressure, threw the ball over Kejuan Lacey's head on the hitch route, and then 2nd down, he tried to throw a fade route to Alexander, and I don't know if it was a miscommunication. It looked like Trinidad wanted him to go more outside or outside release, And so then just like that, it's 3rd and 10, and then they couldn't convert on 3rd and 10, and so you have to settle for another field goal. And that was the biggest thing in the game was Ole Miss only had one red zone trip the entire game. Everything else, they scored on explosive plays or they had to kick field goals. So Miami really limited them well and bowed their necks. That was what I thought changed the game or was the deciding factor in the game. It's funny because during that fourth quarter, each time one of the teams scored, like Ole Miss went down and scored Miami scored with like 5 minutes left. I thought, oh no, they left too much time for Ole Miss. But then I was thinking, Ole Miss is a quick team. They might score and leave time for Miami. That's exactly what they did. 2 minutes later, score with 3 minutes left. I'm like, you left too much time for Miami. But then on the back of my mind, I'm like, well, they might just choke it. Like Ole Miss's offense, I'd bet on more than I'd bet on Miami's offense. But then Miami just methodically drives down the field. Credit Carson Beck, credit Shannon Dawson, credit that Miami offense, the offensive line, Mark Fletcher. They go right down the field, drain the clock, use their timeouts well. There wasn't any mismanagement by Cristobal like we'd seen so many times in the past years, when he was at Oregon and then the Georgia Tech game while he's been at Miami. And they get down to 2nd and goal, and it's almost the same situation as Georgia. They got about, just under a minute left. 2nd and goal. They run the ball to force Ole Miss to use their last timeout. They get stopped short of the touchdown, of course. And so now it's 3rd and goal from about the 3. And it was also, just note that they had thrown the ball pretty much the whole drive, and then they finally go down there and run it, kind of catching Ole Miss off guard. I thought that was a gutsy call by Dawson to go ahead and run it, and even though it was going to kill a timeout, just kind of send that message. And then I thought they were going to run it again and try to just bully their way into the end zone because that's what Cristobal likes to do. He just likes to be more physical than you. And then they drop back, and as soon as they drop back, all I could think about was the SMU game where Miami's in overtime and they're on like the 3-yard line, and they drop back and Carson throws a pick right to the linebacker that seals the game. And so all I'm thinking is, oh, they messed up. They messed up. And then Ole Miss loses contain, the C's part, and Carson Beck just walks right into the end zone. And I was blown away. That was crazy. So basically the same situation as Georgia. The difference was instead of throwing a quick pass and it being incomplete, Beck sits there in the pocket and then takes off and runs into the end zone. So they got a touchdown instead of a field goal. Almost the same situation, except there was less time on the clock. There was only 24 seconds when they ran 3rd and goal, as opposed to Georgia had like 1 minute and 4, and they could have drained the clock down. Miami already only had like 20 seconds on the clock. So they went ahead and it was also a field goal game, just like the Georgia game. So they could have settled for a field goal by just running the ball and not getting it. But they get the touchdown. And then I'm thinking, if any offense can do it, it's Ole Miss. And, of course, they go 40 yards in 2 plays. And I thought the Hail Mary, you're not going to get pass interference calls many times on Hail Marys. But I thought, of course, there was some snagging and pulling by both sides. And, you don't get the call, but both of those teams were very worthy teams of a national championship berth. I thought it was a shame that one of these teams had to lose. It was really a good game to watch, and I still can't believe Carson Beck's going to a national championship game. He looked phenomenal in the second half. He was hitting a lot of passes. And if this is what the first semifinal game is like, I can't wait to see the one tonight with Indiana and Oregon. I have a feeling that Oregon's going to be out to prove something after what happened earlier at home when they played Indiana and just got bullied, and it was only a 3-point game that they lost by, but it felt like they just got absolutely out-physicaled by Indiana, and Dan Lanning does not like that. So I can't wait to see what happens tonight. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you all have a blessed weekend. God bless.